Out to the Middleborough High School and Carver High School financial aid night. Today we have a terrific presenter. She's actually a friend of Principal Mr. Brannigan, and her name is Christina Coviello, and she's from Boston University. And she also volunteers with MIFA, which is Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, to do these presentations for local high schools. So without further ado, I will let Christina take over. Thank you.
Just gonna leave this here. I feel like I'm pretty loud. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, so I'm a friend of Paul Brannigan's, and I made a joke when I came in. I feel like this place is always orange, and so I apologize to him for not wearing orange when I came tonight, but hopefully you won't hold that against me. So I'm here, I work at Boston University as a senior assistant director, but I'm representing MIFA tonight. So obviously if you do have any questions as we go through the presentation, I can certainly take them as we're going, but there's a lot of information to cover, and there will be time to do kind of questions and answers at the end. All right, get right into it. So first, just a little bit about MIFA. So MIFA has a public service mission to help families navigate the college financing process. So I understand that this is first time for many of you. Maybe some of you do have other students that are already enrolled in college, but the information changes sometimes, I think, annually, so it's good, kind of refresher for everyone to kind of get this information on an annual basis. MIFA helps out with community outreach programs like this in high schools. They also have affordable loan options for students and families. Has anybody signed up for any of the MIFA online resources that are available? A couple people. So afterwards you can fill out that form and then enroll in those online resources, and they can send that to you. Really great website as well. So I just want to start off the presentation by saying you can do this. I know it seems like it's a daunting process. We have a lot of families that we try to help throughout the year. It's definitely something you can do. Don't go ahead and pay an accountant or get help from outside sources. This is definitely something that you can do. And I'm going to walk through a lot of the steps tonight of how you're going to be able to do that. I've been in financial aid for just over 10 years now. And like I said, the process does change a little bit year to year. So it's really important. All the information that you're going to get tonight is going to be really helpful as you go through that process. All right, so just the agenda. We're going to talk about different types and sources of financial aid that are available to students. We'll go through the application process. That's the FAFSA, as well as for some schools, the profile. We'll talk about how financial aid decisions are made, what kind of process the colleges go through when they're processing those financial aid applications. We'll talk about paying for college, what happens when you get that bill and how you kind of fill the rest of that gap. And then there are a lot of really great free resources that are available both online, through the community, through each college as well. So types and sources of financial aid. So first of all, financial aid is money that helps students pay for college. College can be very expensive, and so financial aid is there and helps students to access college and higher education. There are three main types. So the first is grants and scholarships, and that would be your gift money. Those are dollars that you don't have to pay back, so that's the best kind of financial aid you can get. The second is work study. And that's where the students would mostly get a part-time job on campus and get a weekly paycheck if they work 5 or 10 hours a week. That's usually what I tell families is kind of the pizza and shampoo money, so that mom and dad don't have to send you stuff for those types of things. And then lastly, student loans. And student loans are definitely a part of the financial aid award. And I want students and families to consider student loans as part of that financial aid package. All right, so many of you have probably heard about merit-based financial aid, and that is financial aid that's gifted to students based on some merit factor. Sometimes it's academic or athletic. It's in recognition of some factor or achievement. It's often very competitive, and I would just say from a personal standpoint, I think that a lot of schools are, or I even can say just for BU specifically, we're moving a little bit away from a lot of merit scholarships and focusing a lot more of our dollars on the need-based financial aid. There's often extra components that a student might have to complete in order to be eligible for a merit scholarship. Sometimes earlier deadlines of even just your admissions application, additional essays. So if you're a student, or if you, I know there are some students here, if you are interested in merit scholarships at specific schools, make sure you're reading what that criteria is, then look at those deadlines and make sure that you're complying with that. Merit scholarships may or may not be renewable. And that's another thing to consider. So each school might have a different policy. It might be something that the student will have just the freshman year. It might be the type of scholarship the student can carry with them for the 4 years that they're in school. And again, it's not offered at every school. So really pay attention to each school, each deadline, kind of stay organized throughout that process. So need-based financial aid is kind of the bulk of the rest of the financial aid. And that is based on your family's financial eligibility. It's basically a calculation through those financial aid applications. It's determined by a standardized formula that the federal government creates for us through the FAFSA. Most aid is actually awarded this way, as I said before. And students normally, to maintain their federal need-based financial aid, they do need to maintain 12 credits per semester and a GPA of 2.0. That's the federal satisfactory academic progress in order to maintain that need-based financial aid. So different sources of financial aid, there are 4 main sources. The first is from the federal government, and that's in the form of grants, work study, student loans, as well as tax credits and tax initiatives that families can take advantage of when students are enrolled in school. Through Massachusetts, through the state, there are state grants, scholarships, tuition waivers, and state loans that students may be eligible for. The college or university may have institutional financial aid, and that can be mostly in the form of grants. I know at BU, a majority of our financial aid awarding is in the form of grants to students. And then lastly, other agencies, so outside scholarships that you either can get throughout the community, anything you can find online through a lot of different websites. And I don't know if you want to talk just a little bit about some of the options and opportunities you have here, I guess, at Harvard. Yeah.
So Middleborough, there's lots of ways to look for scholarships. I know you guys are probably, I'm sure you've heard of the local community scholarship booklet that Middleborough puts out. That actually comes out the first week of March. It's wonderful because usually it's ballpark a couple of $100,000 that people from around Middleborough have left or whatever in their will. Different agencies have donated money that is given away to the Middleborough High School graduating seniors and some alumni. So that comes out around March 8th to 10th area. It will be posted on our website, and you can download it and print it, and it will be due sometime in April. So that's great. We also, whenever I get scholarships, I send them out to the other guidance staff, to the secretary. She posts them on the bulletin board outside of the guidance office, and I will send out a lot of them through Naviance. I'll send an e-blast, and it goes out to all the students in the senior class and the parents who have signed up for Naviance. So if you've never signed up for Naviance at Parents, Guardians, I would highly recommend that you do, because then you'll get that information too when I send it out. So those are some great ways to find out about scholarships. Oh, and we also list them on our guidance website. So Carver. In Carver, we do it a little differently. All of the students have an Naviance account, and on their page, on their Family Connections page, there's a spot down the bottom that says scholarship list. And anytime we have a new scholarship, and that's starting now until they leave this year, Mrs. Gould, our secretary, will be posting that and making that active. In addition, a Jupiter Grades email will go out to say there's an active scholarship, and on
on the Twitter feed, which most of the seniors have, will also be an update saying that that scholarship is active. If there's any specific scholarships that we have to recommend students for, and we pick a student, those students will be called down to guidance for that. If there's one that they get to apply for, then we'll be putting that on Twitter and Jupiter Grades. And then our community scholarship packet will be going out in February. And we will be calling down the students. We'll be sending the parents and the students a Jupiter Grades email. And that information that you need to provide on the Carver packet is based on your taxes. So if you do the FAFSA now and get that over with, that packet's going to be easy to fill out. That goes to a committee at the school, and that was my daughter, sorry. A committee at the school will pick those, but I can guarantee you for Carver students, anyone who fills out that community packet, every single student will get a scholarship. Make sure they meet the deadline. Okay, so there'll be a deadline, but as long as they pass it in, they will receive some kind of money. And you guys can just call us or come down and answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks. I always like to kind of focus a couple minutes on the actual kind of guidance staff to talk about those scholarships, because I think every year there are a ton of scholarships that kind of go unused. There's a lot of money that's out there for students. You just have to kind of really be proactive in meeting the deadlines and making sure that you're on time with the requirements. All right. So actually, according to the College Board's Trends in Student Aid Report from 2015, almost $184 billion was awarded to undergraduate students for the 14-15 academic year. So that's a lot of money that's out there and available for students. About 67% of that was through the federal government in terms of grants, loans, work study, and tax credits. So there is a lot of money available out there for students. Again, I just want to stress the deadlines, making sure that you're doing everything on time, sending in the right requirements to each school, and so you're not leaving money kind of on the table. So we're going to talk a little bit about the application process in general. The most important thing is to really stay organized throughout this process. Every school is going to have a different deadline for financial aid. Some might have early decision deadlines, early action deadlines, regular decision deadlines. Make sure that I always say, like, make a spreadsheet or you make a list somewhere where you have each school listed, what the requirements are, and when those deadlines are, so that each school will get your information on time. The deadlines are really most important. For the first time this year, the FAFSA is actually available right now. Historically, it has been available January 1st, which is a really short turnaround for a lot of families to kind of, make estimates and look at their taxes and W-2s. And now, we're actually looking at the 2015 tax data, and hopefully everyone has done their 2015 taxes. So you can go ahead and fill out the FAFSA online. It's the free application for federal student aid. And again, I want to stress that it's free. Don't go to a website that's going to ask you to, pay, and then they're going to do it for you. It's definitely something you can do. As long as you have an FSA ID, and that's something, has anyone done that yet? I always recommend, I would say, do the FSA ID first. That can sometimes be a little bit of a process. So if you haven't done that yet, I would go ahead and set up the FSA ID, wait till that's all processed, and then once you have that information, you can go ahead and more easily do the FAFSA at that point. You can use something called the data retrieval tool. Because you've already done your taxes, it's going to ask you a question, it'll pop you out to the IRS website, and it'll be able to pull in a lot of that tax data onto the FAFSA already. So you won't have to manually enter that, you won't have to, see if you've misplaced a number, it's going to pull that data right from the IRS website. So if you can, it's important to use that data retrieval tool. It'll just be easier to kind of help you through that process. Another thing, I don't know if there is a FAFSA day here, Amy? Do you know?
Not here.
Okay. Sometimes there is a FAFSA day that's in some local high schools, so if you are really struggling with the FAFSA, you can go to a FAFSA day event. There'll usually be a presentation by some financial aid professional, oftentimes some of my colleagues, and then it's usually in a computer lab, and we kind of help the families fill out the FAFSA in that moment. So if you do have additional questions, you can do it at that point. And the other thing I tell families,
We do have somebody in-house, Mrs. Tammy Miller, she works in the guidance office, and she can help help people individually with the FAFSA, so we don't have a FAFSA day, but
Okay.
if you really need some help desperately, give her a call.
Yeah, so there's resources here if you are having trouble filling out the FAFSA. And then the other thing I tell families, call up the college. Like I work 9 to 5, and we have students and families call all the time with questions. You don't necessarily have to be an enrolled student to kind of get help from us. If we're one of the places that your child is, looking to enroll, we certainly can help you with any questions that you do have with any of the financial aid applications. So information that's reported on the FAFSA, obviously citizenship status. Students can set it up for up to 10 schools. You can send the FAFSA to 10 schools at a time. So if a student is deciding to apply to, let's say, 12 schools, what we recommend students do, go ahead and put 10 schools on that list, wait till that transaction has been submitted to the schools, and then you can go back, delete 2 schools, and add 2 more. So that's the way that you would do that if the student is applying to more than 10 schools. Basically, there'll be a series of questions. There's some skip logic within the FAFSA, but you're going to answer questions about the parent and the student income, assets, the number in your household, and the number in college. Those are the main drivers of the financial aid calculation. And there is going to be information from both parents, regardless of whether or not they're married, if they're living in the same household. So another application that I do like to talk about is the CSS College Board profile. And so the profile is only required by some schools, oftentimes required by private schools like a Boston University that does have a lot of institutional funding to give to students. It does ask a couple more in-depth, detailed questions, just so that we can get kind of a better idea of the financial strength of the family. It does cost $25 for the first school, $16 for each additional school, and there are some fee waivers that students can get if they're eligible for that. Additionally, other schools may also require the non-custodial parent profile, and that is for families where the parents are divorced and living separately. And unfortunately, if the non-custodial parent is either unwilling or just doesn't want to fill that form out, unfortunately that's not a reason. So a student, and I definitely have had students in the past who said my non-custodial parent refuses or just doesn't want to provide any information, and that student oftentimes has missed out on a lot of funding. So it is part of the financial aid application at a lot of private institutions, so it is important that if there is a non-custodial parent involved, that they fill out that information as well. The information is kept separate, and the information isn't shared with the custodial parent. It is all separate, but it is really important that that non-custodial parent comply with those deadlines as well. All right. So the way that the process works is the information that's on the application is processed centrally, and then the schools will get a report of that student's eligibility, and the student will get what's called a student aid report. We encourage students and families to kind of take a look at that, make sure you didn't transpose a number, make any errors, make sure everything on there is accurate. You can go back in and make a change if you need to, but really trying to make sure that all that information is accurate. So I do recommend that students take a look at that student aid report and that everything is accurate on there. Verification might be something that a student is selected for. If a student is selected for verification, they may need to provide an IRS tax transcript or tax return. So that depends on what the school is requesting. So I always say, give an email address that you're going to be checking. If a school calls you and asks for some additional information, make sure that you follow up with that. So how are the financial aid decisions made? Kind of the most important part. So first of all, I just want to talk about the cost of attendance. A lot of people kind of just think about tuition and fees when you're thinking about the college costs. But really you want to look at the total cost of attendance, and that includes tuition and fees, but it also includes an amount for room and board, travel expenses, books, supplies, kind of everything that the student would need while they're in school is part of that total cost of attendance. So when you're looking at your financial aid award, it's going to be against that cost of attendance amount, not just the tuition and fees. again, the expected family contribution, or the EFC, we use quite a bit in the financial aid world, is a calculation of the amount that the family can contribute over time, the amount that the family can absorb in terms of costs. It's the same federal calculation that's used for every student. And again, students that do apply to a lot of those private schools that are using the profile, there's going to be an institutional calculation based on that form as well. Bottom line is that the primary responsibility is left to the family and the student, and obviously that financial aid is there to kind of help with that process. So has anyone used a net price calculator yet? Couple of them. So I think that at this point in the process, if you have seniors, I wouldn't go out and try to do the calculation with the net price calculator. It's a nice tool if you have a student that's a sophomore or a junior to kind of get a little bit of a rough idea of what those costs might be. But the only way you're going to know at this point is if you actually apply for financial aid. So those tools are nice, and like I said, if you do have younger students, it's a nice place to kind of start. But if you do have a senior at this point, I would just jump right into the actual application. So the way that we figure out a student's financial aid eligibility is we take the total cost of attendance, we subtract that expected family contribution, and that's the amount that the student is eligible for in their total financial aid. And colleges are going to try to fill that eligibility with aid from different resources. I'm going to go through a couple of examples. So the first, we're going to talk about the way that the calculation has an impact from the family assets. So this is an example of a family that would have 4 in the family, 1 in college. We're going to keep the combined parent income static at $75,000. And you can see that the parent assets in family A, B, and C are going to vary from 0, $75,000 to $150,000. And you can see that that difference in savings doesn't really have that great of an impact on the actual expected family contribution. So when families do say to me, like, oh, I've saved all this money and now I have to use it for college, as part of the calculation, it's just taking a small percentage of those assets factoring into the calculation. On the flip side, the income does have a larger impact on the calculation. So kind of similar example where the assets are going to be static at this point. We'll leave that at $50,000, and where the income increases from 75 to 100 to 150, the difference is a little bit larger in what the expected family contribution is. And again, I don't want anyone to say like, oh, I fit into this box on this slide, and so that's what my expected family contribution is going to be. There are a lot of other factors that do play a role there, but again, just to kind of give you an idea of, saving actually is beneficial for your student, and it is a highly income-driven calculation. So looking at the way that the formula works, we have college A, B, C, and D. And so college A would be like your 4-year high-cost private institution. Let's say that it's up at $60,000 as the total cost of attendance. Your EFC is going to be the same at all 4 of those schools, so the EFC is $5,000. But you can see that the eligibility at college A is greater. So there's more financial aid that the student can be awarded at college A than they can receive at college D. So college A is your higher cost private. Let's say college D is a local community college. You might not have any eligibility for financial aid at the lower cost school because your calculated expected family contribution is going to meet those needs. Does everyone understand that kind of visual? All right, so in financial aid, we talk quite a bit about kind of filling the bucket with all of your financial aid award amounts. So here's our bucket. So we're always going to start off with the expected family contribution. And so here our college costs $40,000 and our expected family contribution is $5,000. So now we're going to start to fill in the rest of that eligibility. So this student received a scholarship for $9,500. And then they got a grant for $13,500. And then they have the federal Stafford loan for $5,500. And then a work study award of $3,500. So if you've done the math, we still have unmet need or unmet eligibility of $3,000. So where does that go? That $3,000 of unmet financial aid eligibility becomes part of the family contribution. So while your expected family contribution is calculated at $5,000, you're actually going to be expected to pay $8,000. And again, that's not pay in terms of write a check, but just absorbing those costs throughout the year or in a loan over time. So here's an example of how award letters can vary. So we have a total cost of attendance of $40,000, expected family contribution of $5,000, and the eligibility is going to be the same of $35,000 at each of these schools. But you can see that the grants and scholarships amount is going to be different. So when you're comparing your award letters, you want to actually look at each line, item by item. What are the grants? What are the the work study? What are the loans that are in that package, so that you're really kind of comparing apples to apples. So here you can see there is a difference in the unmet need of $3,000 and then $8,000 in each of those examples. I always encourage students, if they are choosing to go to a 4-year institution, to make a 4-year plan. If you're going to a 2-year institution, make a 2-year plan. I feel like I see students sometimes who say, we're going to make this first year work. We're going to, liquidate this, and we're going to, take out this loan, and then all of a sudden sophomore year comes, they don't have any loan eligibility left. They can't take any more loans. They can't really afford it for then that sophomore, junior, and senior year. So really try to focus on making a 4-year plan if the student is enrolling in a 4-year institution. And again, just make sure you're paying attention to all of those deadlines. Again, I have had students miss out on sometimes $50,000, $60,000 of grant just because the deadline was February 1st and they got us the information on February 2nd. That really absolutely does happen. So deadlines are the most important thing, if I can stress that. And another thing I also like to say in terms of the financial aid applications, it's okay to go ahead and put your social security number on the common application, and that does help schools to link the admissions application with the financial aid application. Sometimes there can be a lag time with that, so there are securities in place, but go ahead and use that social security number when you're filling out all of those college applications. Again, we're still comparing awards. Here you can see the total is the same. So this is where I was saying really kind of look at each line item when you're comparing awards. So you can see the difference here is the school has packaged a parent loan in College B and College C. So there's an expectation that they're thinking the parent is going to take out a loan for $26,500 at that College C. So looking at the bottom line, you might say to the student, pick whatever school you want. They're all going to cost us the same out of pocket. But really kind of looking at each individual line item in that financial aid award letter is really, really important. And this is an example of why. All right, so paying for college. So the way that families pay for college is usually in 3 ways. So one would be from past income, and that's income that you or the student has saved over time. So anything that's in the savings account or any investments that you have that you use to pay towards college expenses. The second would be with present income. A lot of schools have a payment plan. At BU, we have a 10-month payment plan, 5 months per semester. So you can spread a lot of those payments out using the present income that you have on a monthly basis. And then lastly would be future income. And that's a way to spread out those payments over time. So either parents or students would take out a loan and kind of repay that over time. I always encourage students to take the federal student loans first before parents go out and take any additional parent loans or additional student loans. The federal student loans have a low interest rate. The 16-17 interest rate was 3.76%. There's a lot of really great repayment options that students have if they do take those federal loans. So definitely always take those federal loans first. They can be either subsidized or unsubsidized. If the student receives a subsidized portion of the loan, that means that the federal government is going to be paying the interest on that loan while the student is in school. Any loan that will be unsubsidized will start to accrue interest while the student is in school. So free resources, again, this is a free resource tonight. I'm here to kind of help you answer any questions that you have. Again, I talked about FAFSA Day a little bit. There's a couple of dates that they're doing across the state, mostly November 6th and January 29th. So you can go ahead and go to the FAFSA Day website and see if there are locations kind of in this area, if you're interested in attending either of those. The First Lady, Michelle Obama, has a Up Next mobile messaging tool for free personalized support, kind of around the college process where students and families can get tips. And then obviously, you know, MIFA, other kind of community outreach programs, other resources that are available online to students and families. MIFA has additional webinars called Paying the College Bill seminars. Those will be available in March and April, and they're kind of designed to help parents and families look through those actual financial aid awards and kind of do that comparison and see what that bottom line is really going to be for students. Again, if you sign up for the MIFA emails, you'll get notification of when those seminars are taking place. The seminars can provide financial assistance on financial aid awards, clarifying how students and families can pay the bill, payment plans, college loans, and what to ask the financial aid office. Again, register at MIFA for all of that information. So what you can do right now, sign up for MIFA emails, make sure that you're getting all of that information from them. Really great resource. Get an FSA ID, that's kind of the first step in this process. Research the deadlines on all of the applications from each of the individual schools, kind of look at that timeline, make sure that you're complying with what the applications are and what those deadlines are. And then lastly, start completing those applications, the FAFSA, and if it is required, the profile. All right, and so I guess that's it. Again, my name is Christina. I can take some questions if anybody has them. Yeah. So the question was, where would I find, or where would you find the CSS? So it's through the College Board, so the same website that the students took the SATs. So it's through that website. Yep, so the question is, as a guardian. So if the student has been adopted by you, okay, so then, you would want, it's going to ask you, it will ask the student, do you have parental information? And there's a checkbox that will say either yes or no if you have a guardian, or if you're a student is a ward of the court, you know, in foster care, those types of questions. And then there'll be some skip logic within the FAFSA that won't ask any parent information. They'll just fill out the student information. So unless the student has been legally adopted, it won't require any of your information. Yep.
Do you recommend, after you get your financial aid package from the school, to then get in touch with the school and get more information from them and see if there are any maybe other things that should be looking at?
Yeah. So the question was, after you receive your financial aid award from the school, do we recommend that you get in touch with the school if you have questions or if there's anything else available? And so a lot of times schools do have an appeal process. Obviously, within the financial aid application, you're just pulling data from your tax return, right? You're just writing down an amount that was on your, 1040. You're writing down an amount that's in your checking and savings accounts, any investments. And so if there's a family circumstance that kind of wasn't able to be relayed in that information, certainly we encourage students and families to kind of reach out to schools individually. BU, for example, does have an appeal process. We can kind of take a second look at what that financial aid award looks like, and oftentimes we can award students a little bit extra money. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I would encourage families to do. If you have questions at all throughout the process, to go ahead and contact the schools and let them know that.
I have plus 2 seniors.
Okay?
Can I kill 2 birds with 1 stone by filling out 1 FAFSA?
Absolutely. absolutely not. And actually, we had that question earlier. I had a family last year, I think, that I met with at an open house, and they were like, oh, well, we did the FAFSA and they're twins, and I just assumed it, you know. So one student had this great financial aid award, and the other student didn't, and had at that point missed the deadlines. So unfortunately, you do have to fill it out twice. It's a student, it goes with that student file, and so you are going to have to fill out the FAFSA twice. As I said, you can use that data retrieval tool, so it's going to pull in all of that information from at least from your taxes. Sometimes there might be a difference. I know sometimes I've met with students and they're twins, let's say, and one, you know, had a summer job, and so one has money that they've saved and the other one doesn't. So that can obviously be a difference too. So definitely 2 applications for 2 students.
And the second question, is it going to ask about their income?
Is it going to ask about their income? It will. So it's going to ask income, assets, number in household, number in college, and the income and asset questions are going to be for both the parent and the student.
If you have more than one child, can you use the same ID?
Yeah, so the question was if you have more than one child, can use the same FSA ID, and I believe you can. So yeah, for the parent information, you can go ahead and use that same. I know we have like, how many passwords do we all have? I can't think of another one. Yeah.
It's into the work study used for pizza and shampoo,
Yeah.
and it was part of a lot of the calculations that you had here. Is the work study also a scholarship, or is it just the cash?
So the question was about work study and where that kind of factors in. It's actually, it doesn't come off the bill. So that's sometimes, it becomes something that you're gonna have to pay more upfront, but it's part of those incidental expenses, the books, the supplies, the transportation. The students will earn a weekly paycheck for however many hours of work they've done. So I have most of my freshmen work, 6 to 8 hours a week, and they get a paycheck for that, and that's for their kind of incidental expenses. It's not going to be something that's going to come off of the bill.
How likely is it that the award letter from the college year 1 is similar to year 2? In other words, do they change that?
Yep, so the question was how likely is it that the award letter is similar from year 1 and year 2? I really can only speak to Boston University. That's where I've obviously been working. But I know that we don't want, and I think most schools don't want to do kind of that bait and switch where they have a student, come in and offer them some great financial aid. It costs us more money and more energy and resources to get a new student than it does to retain the students that we have. And we want to keep those students for 4 years. We want our graduation rate to be great. So at BU, we guarantee that as long as the student is maintaining that satisfactory academic progress, 12 credits per semester, 2.0 GPA, as long as the family circumstances don't change drastically year over year, students can expect the same financial aid award. Now, what does happen is the tuition, often goes up. I will say, 3 or so % typically is what it has been at BU. And so there often looks like there's a little bit more that the family might owe, but the student is also maybe eligible for additional loans. And again, you can go through that appeal process. But yeah, we do try to keep the financial aid award, at least I can speak to BU, the same year over year, because we want to retain that student for the 4 years.
There's a lot of information in your presentation, thank you. Although a lot of them.
Yep, and the slides are available online, again, through MIPA's website if you need to go back and reference anything. Yeah.
For the FAFSA, is the non-custodial parents' information necessary?
No. The question was, for the FAFSA, is the non-custodial parent information included or necessary? And it's not at this point. So that information would just be necessary on the profile. So if the student is only applying to schools that require the FAFSA only, it'll just be the custodial parent. And the custodial parent is defined as the parent that the student lives with more than 50% of the year. And if it's exactly an even split of time with one parent, time with another, it becomes the parent that provides more financial support. Yeah.
If the student is awarded local scholarships at graduation time, do we have to report that to the school? Does that affect the school or federal, state transfer?
Yep, so the question is, how do outside scholarships impact the financial aid award? And again, that's a really good question to ask each school to see how that factors in. I think most schools, what we do and what we do at BU is we're gonna try to fill that unmet need. So if you go back to that bucket, we had that $3,000 of unmet eligibility. Any additional scholarships that the student earns throughout the community, we're gonna fill that $3,000 up. So if a student gets a $4,000 scholarship, let's say, we will have to reduce some of the federal financial aid. So usually that would be the loans would be the first thing that BU would take into account. But again, you're going to want to ask that question of each individual school if the student does receive. I mean, for the most part there, it's a couple $100 here and there, and it usually will just fill that gap. But sometimes if the student does receive kind of a larger award, it may have an impact. But likely, again, on either the loans or the work study would be the first thing. So question was about a son that works full-time, so living in your household? Yeah, so you can include that person as a household member, but you wouldn't include their income. They're not a parent, so they're not providing support. Sometimes there's a grandparent who might live at home, or an aunt or something. So certainly those are people that are living in your household, and your income is feeding them and paying the water bill and that type of thing. So you do want to include them in the household if they're living there full-time. Well, if anyone does have any other questions, I'll hang around up front if you want to come down and ask something. But good luck with everything. I promise you it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. Just take an hour, sit down, get all your information, and you'll be fine. Yes, and so go ahead and write down my name, and if you can fill out those evaluations, that kind of helps me as they prepare.